It's been nearly a month since the start of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the current situation has brought attention to another issue of the rising fuel costs. While it's more noticeable now with the recent headlines, it has been gradually happening within the last year. As a result, you could soon be paying more for your future airline tickets. This is important because while this is an aviation and travel channel, the cost of fuel matters much to the aviation industry, especially for airlines. For many airlines around the world, fuel costs account for around 35% of the airline expenses. And eventually, one way or the other, any expense that the airline has to incur will eventually affect the individual traveler themselves. To start off, we'll see the rise of fuel costs, which have been steadily rising since last year. Going back further since the mid-2015s, the price of both jet fuel and crude oil have been hovering between $35 up to $75 per barrel. Since a dip in the price of oil in March of 2020 amid the COVID-19 pandemic, both the costs of jet fuel and crude oil have been steadily rising, reaching up to nearly $100 per barrel prior to the start of the Russian military action in Ukraine. As of the recording of this video in March of 2022, we have seen a major spike in the prices of jet fuel and crude oil, where it reached around $125 per barrel. Now, going back to aviation, we are going to talk about how it affects airlines, which very much needs pilots and also the fuel needed for the operations of the airplanes. Among the expenses that airlines have, I can't overstate just how important that fuel costs are, being not just 35% of airline expenses, so when the price fluctuates, it does matter a big deal, especially in the current situation as airlines are still trying to mount their recoveries from the COVID-19 pandemic. To address the rising fuel costs, historically airlines have formulated their own strategies, and one of those strategies have been implementing fuel surcharges. Fuel charges are nothing new to travelers, as you likely will already pay for it when you book your flights. Though with fuel being a commodity that could have a sudden price change, a sudden rise in fuel prices could be reflected on your future airline flight bookings via the fuel surcharge. There have been a few airlines in the past who have recently dropped their fuel surcharge when oil prices were lower. Yet now for these handful of airlines, they are bringing back their fuel surcharge. An example of this is AirAsia Malaysia. Recently, the Malaysian budget brand's local operation announced it would be reintroducing the fuel surcharge after doing away with it in 2015. Since earlier this month, AirAsia Malaysia has been implementing the fuel surcharge for domestic and international routes with the added cost of up to 60 Malaysian ringgit depending on the route. More specifically, it would depend on the duration of the flight, with the longer flights having a higher rate. As airlines like AirAsia Malaysia are reintroducing their fuel surcharge, some airlines who do have their own are making their own revisions on them. An example of this recently is from Japan Airlines, which is seeking approval from the Japanese government for an increase in the fuel surcharges on international flight bookings from Japan. The Tokyo-based airline's fuel surcharges will be up by much as 2,700 yen for flight bookings between April and May, compared to the previous travel period of February and March. Their fuel surcharges will be around 1,800 to 20,200 Japanese yen depending on the route. The changing global situation, we could see more airlines implementing changes to the fuel surcharge policy. One airline that is reportedly doing so is Malaysia Airlines. According to a recent report from Edge Markets Malaysia, the Malaysian flag carrier will be introducing a fuel surcharge on select passenger and air cargo markets starting later this month. As travelers will see the direct impact of rising fuel costs on their airline tickets, fuel surcharges are just one way that airlines address the cost of fuel. I won't go more in depth on that in this video, but to summarize, airlines often do negotiate contracts for fuel at certain prices in the hopes that in the event that fuel prices rise, they would be paying for that same amount. This is beneficial for airlines who have foresight, especially when fuel prices go up to $130, they would be able to be paying $90 for a negotiated rate that they did prior. That particular tactic is called hedging. Most airlines do for a majority of their fuel needs, if not 100%. Many airlines around the world do this practice, though there are some who have been caught off guard with the current rise in fuel prices. While airlines negotiate the current price of fuel, ultimately the traveling public will see the effects, whether it would be the rise in ticket prices in some cases, or worse, service or amenity reductions on flights. This is going to be adding to more of the problems for the aviation industry, which is already seeing the cost of operations going up with the rerouting of certain flights between Europe and Asia, which is primarily affecting airlines in Europe and Asia who operate routes between both continents. As we have seen with the COVID-19 pandemic and now with the rising fuel costs along with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, it just goes to show how difficult it is to start and operate an airline. With that said, I definitely hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. This has been Flights in Asia, highlighting the news and updates from the aviation and travel scene in the Asia Pacific. For more updates like this, you can check out the website at www.flightsinasia.com. For now, thank you for watching and have a great day.